Christy, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make beeswax food wraps. We're going to look at one way versus another way. Let's get started with things you will need. Some baking paper, pinking shears, scissors, some coconut oil, food grater, an iron, some pot lids, small bowls, and some cutting boards. You will need your ironing board set up, a pot, and a tray lined with baking paper and some tongs. And here I've set up an outside sort of hanger where I can zip my food wraps outside to cool off. Make sure that you get your materials all washed up in the washing machine before you get the project started. It's important to make sure your material is 100% cotton. So this is my workstation set up. I'm just using it on my ironing board, so then I've got my iron close by, and I've got a tablecloth underneath here to give it a bit more support, and then I've put 2 layers of the baking paper down, and then this is the layer that I will use for on the top. So I will let you know how this works out, but I think this is a good setup. And why not use your ironing board? And then I've got my kitchen table over there to grab stuff, and then just outside the door there I've got my hanging stand. Okay, so I am getting ready to cut my materials. Because I am going to be making quite a few of these, what I thought it was best to do was fold it over so I'm cutting 4 layers, and that way then I'm getting through this much quicker. But of course, if you're just making a few for yourself, you don't need to do that. So the idea is to find some cutting tools that you've got around the house, and I can sort of put the breadboard here and cut around there for straight lines. This is great for circles, even a pot lid. You could use a bowl or anything that you can find. Really just look around your kitchen. So I'm going to be doing some circles and some rectangles, so I'm going to cut those out now. Okay, so turn your iron on, put it on the wall setting, and get your papers ready. As you can see, I've just tucked my baking paper under there to make it a little bit more sturdy, and then I'll be able to get started. Have your coconut oil close by. Place down your first piece. Take a bit of coconut oil in your hand, rubbing your hands together. The idea here is to put a layer of the coconut oil on just one side of the wrap. Of course, it's great for our skin, so waste not, want not. Place your grater and your block of beeswax and give it a grate. I found this a bit tough. It's not an easy job and not one of my favourites. I also just cut up a piece of my wax in shreds, and I'm going to try this in the coffee grinder. As you can see, I'm going to need some more wax here, so I zip over to the side and try some more in the coffee grinder, which didn't work so well because it got sticky, but I did return and finished off this wax wrap, getting all the areas done. Yay! Give it a bit of a waft.
Yay! I just hung my first wrap.
Okay, so let's try the second one. So I do the same procedure again, making sure that I get my coconut oil on my wrap. I'm back to grating again because the coffee grinding idea wasn't something that you'd want to keep doing. The wax got a bit sticky in the grinder, so I'm back to grating again, making sure that I can cover as much of the surface as possible. Placing my paper over, and as you iron down, you can see the wax through the paper as it starts to melt. So it's quite easy for you to see the areas that are getting soaked by the wax and the areas that are not. So you just keep using your iron to push the wax around, checking on it, and then adding more wax as you go along. And like I said, you can see the parts that haven't got the wax, so you can just sprinkle some more grated pieces over those areas. Put your paper back over, and I was experimenting with 2 pieces of baking paper to 1, so you can trial and error with this, what you prefer, but 1 sheet is ample enough. Because I was new to this, I felt like I had to use 2, but see, when you're just using 1, you can see a lot easier the areas that haven't been done. So after finishing with the iron method, I then hung my wraps outside and noted that you would get probably 10 wraps out of 100 grams of wax. So that's just a good indication that you're going to get about 3 wraps out of 30 grams of wax. So I would say that was a pretty good economical outcome. So let's get into the next stage now.
Okay, going into part 2 now, showing you a different way to melt the wax and do the wraps, because I've got quite a lot of wraps that I want to do. So this would be another option and way to try it. So I have got my pot, I've got a tray wrapped up here with baking paper, and I've got my wax up here. So, and I've also got some tongs, some small ones, because this is going to be hot and I don't want to put my fingers in. So this is the plan. I've got my coconut oil here, which I will rub in my hands and then rub on one side of each wrap. So I'm going to do a whole bunch of them to be prepared, and also making sure I've got tongs on this side as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some wax in this pot. I'm actually going to heat it up first in the oven, and then so I can show you what that looks like. But then I want to actually keep it warm on my gas stove here to keep it at a temperature. Some people make the wraps in the oven with melting the wax and then doing a dipping system. So I'm going to have the wax, have the coconut oil pre-wiped on the wraps, and then I'm going to dip it into the beeswax here, and then as I hold it up and let it drain, I will then place it onto this tray, which will then go outside on my hanging rack. So that's my plan. I've also got my little apron hanging up here, so I think that's quite a good idea to put that on, and a bit of fun. And it's my new apron, so of course I want to use it. And my workstation is just here. I just greased my pot with some coconut oil before I put the wax in, so hopefully that'll protect my pot for later use. So I'm going to get some wax. Now I'm thinking I want quite a bit. I've got a lot of wraps to do. So if you're imagining you're going to get about 10 wraps out of 100 gram, I've at least got quite a few to make. So now I'm going to pop this in the oven. So pop this in the oven to get it melted. I'm just putting it on around 220 and I'll watch that. Mr. Jackals is coming close because he can smell all the smell in the kitchen. So very important, if you've got a puppy watching, to swirl in your cute apron. Say hi everyone. What's going on here in the kitchen today? So let's take a look. It's only been about 10 minutes and I have turned the oven down a bit lower. And they're melting away, almost ready. So when I pull my wax pot out of the oven, I'm going to sit it here and I'm just going to use it on a very low element to keep it warm so that I can go from here to here to here to outside hanging. Okay, let's see. Yes, it's all melted, so I'm going to bring that over very, very gently. Beautiful. This is exciting now at this stage. I'll up my sleeves a little. So here goes. Will I need the 2 tongs perhaps? So I've oiled the coconut, so dipping in. Definitely need these tongs, right? I think dripping it well will make a big difference. So I think it's worth probably waiting for those drips. So I'll just put that one down here. It's not touching. We go for the next one. Might do some smaller ones to start off with so I get used to it. Oh, already this feels a lot easier than grating away at that wax. I found that a little bit tough and a bit slow. Okay, if you're just doing 1 or 2, but I've got like quite a few meters to do here. Yay! So much easier. Well, let's say at this point it is. I haven't put the heat on this wax just yet because it's not needed. Okay, so I've just done my first 4 and now looking at them I can see that the wax on here is probably just a little bit too thick, but I think if I go through and dip them all in, I think that then giving them an iron afterwards to take off the excess wax that's not needed. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. But if you're grating, the first stage probably does get a lot easier and an even distribution of the wax. So now that I've sort of learnt by my first attempt from these ones I've made here, looking at them a little bit thicker in the wax, like you can see, perhaps this one is just too thick. But what I'm thinking might solve the problem is keeping the wax a lot hotter, which then is going to give it a thinner frame and you can drip it off easier. So let's see how that works out. Putting the beeswax up higher didn't really make that much difference. There's still probably a little bit excess wax on here. Now what you can do is go back to your ironing board station and put a wax piece with a piece that you haven't yet done on top of each other and iron it so that you can soak this wax off into the other one. So that's going to be what I try next. And also, as this wax dries, I'm going to try to break it up into smaller pieces and see if that works, and that saves the process of doing all that hard grading and working with blocks. So we'll see how that works. You can buy the beeswax in pallet form. Ideally, that is the best, but probably not the most economical. So I think I'm going to try to wait for this wax to cool down and break it up in there so that perhaps I can use that and be more malleable to iron it on. While that wax is drying, it's time for a cup of tea. What's my favourite cup today? I think I'll just go this one. Yum. Who else loves their herbal tea? You're always going to stop for a tea break. Tea time. Yeah, you betcha that this project attracts bees. Look at this little guy that's come in. Can't get him in focus. So, that's a tip if you have a problem with bee stings. Make sure that, where is he? Oh, he's buzzing around here somewhere. That you be aware of that, you're attracting these. There he is. Maybe he's just come to be on camera. He's down here. So cool. Hello, Mr. Bee. Wow, how cool is this? Now, you won't see this in any other technique in YouTube, so I'm pretty impressed with that. So it has, as it's cooled, I've been able to chop that up. Looks like scrambled eggs, actually. But I think that this is much easier than grating all these pieces and saving yourself from the work. So I'll be able to just put this in a container or just leave it on here and then go back to my first way of doing the beeswax wraps and just having this broken up. So I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes while this is still soft and just crumble this up. Also, a tip to getting your pot back to normal again is to fill it up with water once you've scraped as much as you can off and bring that to the heat and clean the sides while it's boiling water. Let it cool and the wax will lift to the top, and then you've got a clean pot. Okay, another way to get the beeswax off is to just get some coconut oil and rub that on the plate. I was using this to hold some wax on. You don't want this going down your drains, so as you can see it breaks up the wax. You can just slide that off. Okay, so on this side, this was the first procedure of making the beeswax wraps, where we use the grated wax and an iron. Now on this side, I've dipped these into a pot of wax. Now it's hard to pick up on the camera, but it's just too thick on this side. It doesn't look good at all. This here looks much nicer, feels nicer. So to get these back to this way, we just go back to the iron, and I can place another piece of material on this that hasn't got the wax, and that will absorb this wax, and then it'll be perfect. And then we're going to go back to using the iron, but then with my new wax procedure of using now these smaller pieces, so we get rid of the grating. Okay, so here we have the wax wrap that we did in the pot. That's too thick. Don't know what that is. Anyway, put that down on our sheet. We get a new piece of material that's also had the coconut oil wiped on it. Place another piece on, and let's see how this works. Okay, I can start to see the wax coming through on the new piece of material. Let me check that. Wow. A little bit on this end here. And then we're going to have 2 wraps done. Okay, so that's kind of impressive, to be honest. Oh, there's one little corner just there. We want to make sure we've got wax consistently over the whole piece of material, transforming it into wax wrap. Okay, let's see now. Wow, now we have 2 awesome wraps. Perfect, just like the first ones, and I only needed to. So that is a good way of doing half your wraps, dipping it in the wax, if that was easier for you, and then you're going to get the second one out of making that. If you need the extra wax, well, now we've got it also in the smaller palette style. To wash our beeswax wraps, all you need to do is get some soapy water, give it a white rub over, run it under some cold water, let it dry, and it's ready to be reused. To refresh your beeswax wrap, you can hold it over a hairdryer. You could place it between the baking paper on your iron and give it an iron again. So activating it with the heat will bring it back to life. But beeswax wraps are biodegradable.
Thank you for joining me on this beeswax wrap journey. Hope you got some good tips to find your way of making your own wraps, and so you could get using them in your kitchen, and they make beautiful gifts As you can see, I was experimenting and trying them on my bowls straight away. So enjoy the project. I particularly liked wrapping up my cheese. I'm always struggling with Glad wrap and knowing what to wrap up my cheese. You're going to find your way, and I wish you luck, and I hope to catch you on the next video.